Today is International Albinism Awareness Day. 1 in 5,000 people in sub-Saharan Africa has the genetic lack of skin pigmentation. Unfortunately, this makes many targets, and the fight to ensure their safety continues. There's a price on the heads of people with albinism in the likes of Tanzania. And whether dead or alive, regardless of whether they are children or not, to discuss, of course, these challenges of people with albinism, I'm joined by a member of the Association of Persons with Albinism in Malawi. Social worker Naomi Muhamba joins me this morning. And Naomi, thank you so much for making time for us right here on eNCA. And I want to talk particularly about some of those systematic and structural gaps and even challenges that people with albinism still face, not only in countries like Tanzania or Malawi or South Africa, but the greater African continent. Where do those challenges lie?
I would say the challenges, one of the challenges is lack of data on us people with albinism. Most of African countries, they don't have the systems the data system on people with albinism, and just because of that gap, most of the policies that are made in the countries, they are not inclusive to us people with albinism and people with disabilities in general. And another structural gap that I always see is in lack of accommodation in the things that people do. For instance, employment, recruitment in the employment sectors. We're not accommodated as people do in Western countries and also in European countries. I've seen a number of vacancies in the European countries and also the Western countries where they have a clause that if you're a person with albinism and you qualify, you'll be given that chance to be interviewed. So I think one of those gaps is it's also seen in Malawi and also in Africa in general.
Yeah, we're having this conversation also because the theme for raising awareness this year, Naomi, is inclusion is strength. And if we're talking about these challenges, it means that there needs to be more inclusivity. You've mentioned some of them, accommodation, employment, the list goes on. But also because we know that people living with albinism or people with albinism oftentimes are prone to skin cancer, vision impairment. Have you seen inclusion in terms of healthcare?
I would say a number of there are a few qualified doctors that can screen us for skin cancer, the prone of the skin cancer disease, and also the visual impairment. I'll give an example here in Malawi. We only have I think 3 central hospitals that have qualified doctors, but the qualified doctors are not enough, and since they are not enough, they can't reach a person with albinism who is in a little area who cannot be able to go to the hospitals. I also say,
if I can just come in there as well, Naomi, I mean, when I was opening up for this conversation, I also made mention of this worrying trend that we still see in Africa where people with albinism also face being killed on a daily basis. It seems like you always have to look over your shoulder if you're safe in your surrounding, in your own community. Why do you think there's still such a big problem when it comes to the killings that have been recorded in the continent when it comes to people with albinism?
I'd say there is a gap in a way that in our systems, speeding of process of cases that are pending in the justice in the courts, just because they are pending, people are continuing doing that because they haven't seen the consequences of abducting us, and also the consequences of humiliating us, and also the consequences of us being denied of our human right to life.
Also, can you please I suppose, add your perspective on, some of the reports that these killings are also due to witchcraft for some reason or the other. Very bizarre that it seems that people with albinism are killed because of their body parts that are also used for witchcraft. I mean, this could also go into the misinformation that we hear and the need now to have more awareness being raised regarding people with albinism. Could there be any truth to some of these allegations we're hearing regarding the motive behind these killings, Naomi?
There is no truth in that, because it's only us that, I mean, it's us people with albinism. We just have that difference with them in terms of genetics, meaning that when you go to science, you can say that you take a bone of someone to get bleach. It's not possible. And you can take an internal organ of someone just because they have certain difference in your genetic makeup.
Yeah. Also, just in terms of interventions that need to be expedited, you mentioned, policy interventions early on in our conversation. Where should this conversation now escalate to? Yes, we're raising awareness, we're talking about it, you and I, but surely those in positions of influence and power in government, what role can they play, do you think? Are you with me, Naomi?
Yes, I am. I think it's just network.
All right, apologies for that. I'll just repeat my question. I mean, earlier on we did speak about policy intervention. And I suppose my question to you is, for those in government, for those in positions of influence and power, in terms of gazetting these, bills and amending them, what do you think are the next steps that are to be taken so that to progress from just having conversation, raising awareness, and actually having policy in place?
I'd say everything that our good governments are doing is nice, but we need funding. I'll give an example of us here in Malawi. We have the National Action Plan on Persons with Albinism, where there is like a strategy on how to protect us, and also on how to, there is that initiative of building secure homes to people who are underprivileged. So I think when these governments have that political will to fund those policies and also implement them, because just funding them, they can fund them on paper, but then they also have to give out those funding to organizations such as Association of Persons with Albinism in Malawi, and also other countries that have associations of people with albinism.
Well, I appreciate you speaking to me about this. Naomi Muhamba, thank you so much for your time. Naomi from the Association of Persons with Albinism in Malawi.